All right, can I get everybody to take their seats, please? I would like to call the meeting to order. I'm gonna bang my gavel in a second here, people. Did she? Ooh, I did it once. I did it at the people. All right, I would like to call this meeting to order. Oh, don't make me use the gavel. Okay, there we go. And I would like to acknowledge that our meeting is taking place on unceded Algonquin territory, and we thank the Algonquin nations for hosting us on their land. Do I have somebody to move the approval of the agenda? Trustee Huff, thank you. Are there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries, and I will look to the chair for her briefing.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tonight, a good number of our students and their families are celebrating Eid al-Fitr, which marks the end of the month-long fast of Ramadan for the Muslim community. The festival began last evening and it ends this evening. Last evening, the Committee of the Whole Budget heard delegations from the public on the staff recommended budget for 2019-20. Next Monday, June the 10th, the public will have another opportunity to present their views and provide input on the budget. Delegations that register with board services by 4 p.m. on Thursday, the 6th of June, will be allocated 4 minutes to speak, and delegations may also sign up at the meeting to speak for 2 minutes. In late May, the Premier announced the creation of an audit and accountability fund to allow up to 10 school boards to access funding to undertake independent third-party line-by-line reviews of operations and service delivery, with a goal of finding administrative efficiencies of up to 4 cents on every dollar spent. The Deputy Minister is expected to provide more information about the application-based funding in the coming days, at which point we will review it carefully. Last Thursday also, the district recognized the work of graduating grade 12 students from all 26 OCDSB high schools and the adult high school and secondary alternate sites. And we wish these students and all students success and happiness as they begin a new chapter in their life. These students were recognized for exceptional leadership that they had demonstrated in their school communities, and some of the stories were truly impressive. Next week, on the 13th of June at 6 p.m. at Confederation Education Center, we will be hosting our Community Recognition Awards and honoring many volunteers and contributors to our schools. I hope very much that I will see all of you there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions on the chair's briefing? Seeing none, I'll look to the director for her briefing.
Thank you, and through you, Madam Chair. The first item is regarding our focus group sessions regarding the collection of identity-based data. During the month of May, during this May 2019, the district held meetings with community partners to plan for focus groups with students and families. Last Friday, we held student focus groups to allow students to share their experiences in schools, including things that help them to succeed. They also got a chance to talk about barriers and challenges that they had to overcome and what they might do differently in the future to ensure equitable access to learning opportunities and outcomes. This month, the district will host focus group sessions for parents, guardians, and community members. The sessions will be of particular interest to students and families who have experienced racism, biases, or barriers, including anti-Black racism, anti-indigeneity, anti-Semitism, homophobia, Islamophobia, transphobia, poverty, classism, ableism, and disabilities. The feedback from these sessions will help to inform planning for the data collection in the fall. In terms of the strategic plan feedback, the OCDSB is continuing to receive feedback on the draft strategic plan until June the 7th. Staff is reviewing the feedback carefully and will present the final draft on the plan at the Committee of the Whole meeting on June the 18th. A school council works best when it is fully representative of the school community. Building a multicultural school council means giving the opportunity for both parents and students to share their experiences, beliefs, and celebrations. This helps the school council plan activities and events which will engage the whole community. Last Friday's school council newsletter contained a number of tips to help school councils build a more diverse school council. And we'd like to congratulate John McCrae Secondary School, recognized for strengthening students' math achievement. On May 9th, the Education Quality and Accountability Office, also known as EQAO, recognized John McCrae Secondary School with the Dr. Bet M. Stevenson Recognition of Achievement Program. John McCrae is one of just 22 Ontario high schools being recognized with this honor. Nora Marsh, CEO of EQAO, said the way that students view and think about math often influences their academic achievement in that subject. Our principal, Richard King, expressed his pride in his students and his staff and talked about the fact that this is not just about students doing well on testing, it's about students doing well in their educational journey, as well as the commitment of staff to their learning, and we congratulate John McCrae. And that's all.
Are there any questions on the director's briefing? Seeing none, I have the distinct pleasure of inviting Ms. Vicky Kiriako to come and give us a presentation on the student bus transportation.
Good evening, and thank you very much for making some time for OSTA on your agenda today. I think it's very important as one of our member school boards, as one of the two member school boards that have delegated representatives on our board of directors to be able to hear directly from the CAO regarding what's going on at OSTA on the operational side. So OSTA actually provides service for almost 227 schools for the OCDSB and the OCSB. And we currently transport almost 70,000 students, which is the most in the province. We are expecting to transport almost 71,000 students next year. So we are in a growing environment, not only for a number of students that are being transported, but just in general with registration increasing every year. We also have a very active school active transportation program, which allows us to now provide services for students who are in the walk zone. In terms of some statistics, I've got a chart there to demonstrate how the number of buses has been ebbing and flowing. The E&E was the efficiency and effectiveness review, which we experienced in 2015, where we achieved a high rating. As a result of a number of initiatives that we had at the time to become a more efficient and effective consortium. So we actually reduced the number of buses that we were using to transport the same number of students. As you can see, the number of buses is slowly increasing, not to previous levels, but certainly as changes occur in our system, we've had to add transportation for different students. We've also increased the number of Presto passes that we provide high school students. And in fact, we provide Presto passes for grades 7 to 12. We have walking school bus routes, which are quite interesting. It was an interesting initiative here in the province. We're seen as a model for the walking school bus route model with paid leaders. So we currently have 13 routes with 18 leaders, and we are implementing a blended paid and volunteer model here in the next year or so. So we actually have 4,900 runs daily. So those are actual trips to school. And again, that's a great number of runs. It's approximately 24 million riders a year. So if you think in terms of a public transit system, we're about the size of London Transit. In terms of our policy development, so all of the delegated authority at the OSTA Board of Directors to create all the transportation policies, but our eligibility parameters and a number of other service parameters are in our service level agreement that we have with our individual member school boards. But we do try to harmonize those policies between the two school boards as much as possible. So this year we reviewed the inclement weather policy and procedure. We've also reviewed consultation, student behavior on the buses, our empty seat procedure, and our expense policy. And I know that inclement weather was an interesting topic this year, and we did determine after doing some research regarding potentially applying a temperature threshold for canceling services, we became very aware that with the number of weather advisories in the last 5 years, we would have had to cancel 47 times, or the cold frostbite advisory. So 47 times is quite a bit in our environment, and I don't think we'd want to cancel transportation that often. So as a result, we have not added a temperature threshold in our policy. And we've currently got under review how to deal with cannabis, and also a tornado policy to provide some indications and procedures at the school and also with our bus drivers when there's a tornado. So that's currently being developed. In terms of our cost per student per year, you'll see, I guess you can barely see that. So we're kind of slowly but surely increasing our cost per student, but we're also increasing the number of students as we go year to year. The last two columns, the tall ones there for 2018-19, so these are the forecasted numbers for this year. Now I've provided two different columns there. One includes the wage supplement, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which increased the cost per student this year. But without the wage supplement, our cost per student still is increasing, but in ratio to the number of students. So why are costs going up? Well, first of all, we've got some new contract rates that are designed to assist the operators deal with the driver shortage. So basically increase wages so that we can attract more drivers. The cost of buses has increased because of the steel and aluminum tariffs, and also the U.S. exchange. The exchange rate itself has increased their costs significantly. Our costs are also going up because the number of students are going up, and we've also got an increasing number of students with special needs, and the cost per student to transport students with special needs is very high. And what can we do about the costs? Well, we have reached out to our boards to create a joint working group. So it's only in working together that we can start looking at how costs are being driven from the board's perspective with the decisions that are made at the board, and also how OSTA can respond to those decisions operationally so that we're as efficient as possible. So this year at OSTA, we've been extremely busy actually monitoring and trying to mitigate the driver shortage. We've had the tornado and the flood responses, which involved providing transportation to hundreds of displaced students throughout the year, and then altering their transportation as their situation changed. We are discussing standards of performance. We've had 28 weather assessments this year with 6 transportation cancellations. We've negotiated our new collective agreement, and we received a grant actually from the Ministry of Education for our active transportation. So why is there a driver shortage? Mostly it's about compensation, and it's about the type of job that it is. It's a split shift, it's not a true part-time, and it's not a true full-time job. So there are a lot of challenges here in our market in Ottawa with a low unemployment and also changing demographic. So what we're doing about it, we've implemented a wage supplement until the contracts can be renegotiated and have their new terms. And we're also looking at joint advertising. We are reviewing coverage every single day to ensure that the routes are covered. And we're also looking at implementing cameras on buses and paying greater attention to student behavior management so that the drivers can focus on driving. For our school bus safety, we've got a company called Intertrain School Bus Safety that's coming in and is actually being funded by the Ministry of Education to provide school bus training in elementary schools. And so we've got here Buster the Bus is one of the characters of this interactive presentation, and that's done very well. We're also looking at integrating technology in our buses, so looking at cameras inside the buses. We're also working with the city for school bus stop arm cameras, which will capture the drivers that blow by the buses. And they've deployed some on the French school board buses, and we have 3 buses that will be receiving those camera systems. And also implementing GPS tracking. We piloted an electronic bus behavior form, but we kind of ran into some issues with that. So we're revising that to try to reduce some of the complexity of that system. We've also been involved with the federal task force and the standing committee regarding seatbelts on school buses. And also OCDSB will be piloting a new CAA bus patroller program, which is really great news. In terms of school active transportation, so these are services to assist students who are in the walk zones get to school using human-powered forms of transportation. We fund Ottawa Safety Council for the walking school bus and pedestrian safety training, and we work with the Enviro Center to deliver school travel planning, which we now have renamed School Active Transportation Planning. And through our grant, we are developing, well, we have developed a parent engagement presentation, and we're going to be implementing our hybrid, blended, and volunteer walking school bus model among a number of other projects in our system. And I'm happy to answer questions. Thank you for your attention.
Great, thank you. Trustee Campbell.
Thank you for the presentation. Austin is a busy place. Very obviously. Do I have it right that effectively, as long as the consortium is meeting agreed E&E targets and that kind of thing, that the province effectively will, with maybe there's lag in new funding, but effectively will fund whatever the costs are? Is that more or less correct? Effectively, Austin presents through the boards a bill to the province in terms of this is what the transportation costs are, please fund. The board doesn't necessarily scrutinize for accommodations decisions that boards have taken, or programming decisions that boards have taken, or special education provision decisions boards have taken, or what have you, that effectively whatever those decisions are, the province at the end of the day will fund. Is that ballpark correct?
I wish it was like that, but it's not. It was kind of a one-time program. That program no longer exists. It was really to get different school boards to work towards having a consortium so that they could increase efficiencies amongst numerous school boards by having harmonized policies and improving operational effectiveness. And then once the school boards who had a deficit at that time could demonstrate that they met a number of requirements, then they would get their funding set up to what their expense was. But since then, there's no adjustments other than the GSM.
So just to follow up, would it be the expectation that if the boards were to agree, or individual boards were to make adjustments that might lower their cost of busing, would the province be likely to lower its funding in tandem, or would the difference be available for boards to use for other transport purposes, or even just for other purposes, period? In other words, I guess what I'm trying to get at is there, what incentive is there effectively for boards to look to reduce transport costs if funding may go down in tandem, if that's the case?
Well, I know that the Ministry of Education right now is collecting data from the consortia to review the funding formula. So I think there's a recognition from the Ministry of Education that costs are increasing beyond what the funding formula allows for. So from that perspective, there's work happening on that end. How they're going to assess how efficient or effective a current consortium is remains to be seen. They are gradually increasing the GSN funding for boards that are in deficit, and I know that they've had this stabilization form. I think probably CFO Mike Carson could answer that question a little bit more accurately. In terms of finding monies and becoming more efficient, that's where the working group comes into play for OSTA. A lot of the cost drivers are decisions that are made at the board, and unless we work in tandem to determine whether the transportation costs and those decisions sort of work well together or at cross purposes to each other, we really won't know if we've got the best system.
Thank you, and I'll leave it there, and I appreciate the dialogue of it. I guess as long as the OCDSB is not in deficit, I believe we are right now with respect to the funding for transportation. But as you know, obviously there's an incentive there, but otherwise it strikes me that the incentive might be effectively, I guess there's one taxpayer, but saving money for the province at the end of the day, as opposed to necessarily saving money ourselves potentially. So, but anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, Trustee Lara.
So I have two questions. My first question is, your graph, I couldn't read any of the numbers, but you said that student costs were increasing, or your cost per student was increasing. Was that higher or lower than the rate of inflation?
I'm not certain. I can get back to you with that. In general, it looks like it's increasing by about 2% per year, which is kind of typical with what our budgets have been increasing.
Thanks. My second question was about, so my understanding is we need a special class of license to become a bus driver, and that you need to take some sort of course to be able to get this special class of license. Do we offer paid training to people who wish to become bus drivers?
So all of the operators actually offer free training, and it's a Class B license, and they'll have their own training program, and many of them can do their own testing as well. It takes about, I want to say 3 to 4 weeks to actually get a driver fully ready, have their license testing, make sure that the vulnerable sector check comes through, and where there's a bit of a delay is the MTO actually providing them with the paperwork so that they can get on the road.
So no, we don't offer paid training, we offer free training?
The operators provide free training. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Boothby.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation. Good information. On one of your charts there, if I read it right, it looks like we are running a lot more vans than actual buses. And can you tell me what's contributing to that? Is a lot of the building, like I know some of the areas here in Canada and Stittsville that are expanding like crazy, we're actually using vans rather than yellow buses. But what are the factors that are most contributing to that?
Yes, we have about 700 vans versus 630 yellow buses, and those yellow buses even include the wheelchair buses. So we do have a lot of small vehicles running around town. There are a few different cost drivers there. One, we've got programs kind of all over the city with eligibility all over the city, which means any student anywhere could attend a special program. And so oftentimes we use vans for those. We've found there's been an increase of definitely some construction. We are trying to enforce our procedure where we will only provide transportation in those areas to the nearest available bus stop where the city has taken over the roadway. But we're finding that because the construction is so sort of spread out and it happens in different stages and not necessarily in a logical way, we're finding there's constructed areas or areas that are almost fully constructed where the kids can't walk to school, which means we do have to provide vans, and that's kind of been a tough one to enforce for us. The number of students with special needs is increasing. There's no doubt about that. And their needs are becoming more, have greater requirements for single rider transportation, for example, or not really using those vans to full capacity because of the student needs. So we found that that's really increased the number of vans that we've had to implement. Originally, we didn't, earlier this year, our capacity for providing van service was actually being tasked. And so we're bringing on 2 new operators with operator-owned vans to provide more service.
Thanks for that. Also, I noticed that you had something in there, and I missed it, about the potential legislation for seat belts on buses. Can you just, when do we think that's going to come out? And I can't remember what reading that's at.
To be honest, I'm not sure what reading it's at this moment. I know that there's a report that is being reviewed now. I had an opportunity to take a look at the draft. There's a lot of focus, from my opinion, on American studies. And there aren't a lot of Canadian studies that look at how seatbelts would be applied in our environment and in our weather and with our little people in snowsuits, and what that looks like when there's a bus evacuation or a fire or other circumstances other than a potential rollover, which to us we've only had one in 20 years where there was an actual death because of a rollover accident. But when we start looking at the impact, the operational impact, but also the safety concern, we're actually increasing risk for the other kids that are going to be on the bus, required to attach their own seat belts, adjust the shoulder belt properly. And if they don't attach their seat belts, what are the risks to them when they're no longer in a compartmentalized seating arrangement in the bus? That means we would need risk mitigation through bus monitors. Well, we would need 700 bus monitors. So there's the study side of it, where we don't have enough data based on what's happening in Canada, in my opinion, and that's certainly what I suggested when I did my presentation to the Standing Committee of Infrastructure and Transportation, because the operational side of things is really going to change the way we deliver transportation here in Ottawa. I think that the cost would be astronomical, and we would have to actually reduce the number of students who would have access to yellow bus transportation.
Okay, thank you for that. And one last question. So if those were to come into effect, the seat belts required, would we have a significant capacity on our school buses change? In terms of, I'm assuming you could only have 2 pupils per bench seat if the seat belt came in, and I think that we are sometimes, depending upon the age of a child, actually utilizing up to 3 students per seat.
Right now, our bus capacity utilization is 3 to a seat for kids under grade 6, grade 6 and younger. There are seats with 3 seat belts. I don't think we could get 3 little kids with snowsuits and backpacks 3 to a seat. So definitely our bus capacity utilization would go down. We estimated also, because the time component, right, for kids to sit down, attach their belts before the bus keeps going, would reduce the number of runs that we could do with each bus. So rather than having a triple, we'd be down to a double will go down to a single. So we estimated we would need about 100 more buses. Now, we already have a driver shortage. I think finding an extra 100 drivers would be very challenging.
Thank you for that.
Great, thanks. Trustee Jennings.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm interested in the walking school bus model. I have a number of families at one particular school that find it very challenging to get their children to school on time. Both parents are working. They're new to the community. They haven't built up a base. So if I could learn a little bit more about this system, is it in place at a number of schools? If you could just give a little more information on it.
In 2014, we actually piloted a paid walking school bus model. So the Ottawa Safety Council actually has an individual who is paid to lead 10 children, up to 10 children. And this person has their vulnerable sector check and has their first aid, and the original intent, and of course that grew to now 13 routes, and we've expanded to include the junior walking school bus leaders, so kids who graduate or out of the walking school bus. So by the time they get to grade 4, they really don't want to be walking with all the little kids. So now they can become a junior walking school bus leader, and they get their special vest, and they actually help herd the little kids along. And those walking school buses actually can expand to 30 in terms of full participation. But those walking school bus routes, the paid model, were really meant to be a reculturing tool. So to help parents get over the barriers of thinking that maybe their kids couldn't walk because it was too cold, or it was too far, or it was unsafe. And the fact is, we've demonstrated, even in the dead of winter, that a lot of kids love walking and that they are able to walk 20 minutes to school. And what we want to do is evolve that model, though, so that the community takes it on. It's no longer a board paid for service. It's the community has adopted active transportation and walking to school as the norm. So we have a very robust program in terms of doing pedestrian training, having the walking school bus. We do the school active transportation planning, which has a committee at each school that's involved in the program so that they can look at the infrastructure. We communicate with the city to try to improve the infrastructure, put in sidewalks where we need them, lines where we need them, the pedestrian crossovers or crossing guards. And that's really, though, the end goal is to get kids out of their parents' cars and walking to school. It's not so much to get kids off buses or not have them on empty seats, but it is really to try to manage that car traffic around the school and normalize walking as the mode of choice.
I have no further speakers on my Trustee Fisher.
Thanks, Madam Chair. Just very quickly. Yesterday during the budget meeting, we learned that there were going to be cost increases on the transportation side. Over the last year or so, and part of your discussions with the OSTA board, are there some particular issues within our board that are causing some of those cost increases for us? I guess that's the first question. And then the second question is, when you look at the inclement weather policy, did you get a chance to explore an issue that I think I've talked to you before in the past about the differences between urban Ottawa and rural Ottawa, and how we decide whether or not a bus should run or not run? Was that brought up as part of the inclement weather review, and if so, sort of where did you land on maybe thinking about a more differentiated approach for the City of Ottawa?
In terms of some of the cost drivers, that's why we proposed having the working group. So, for example, when a school closes, it saves money on the facility side of it, the capital assets. You don't have to spend money fixing it. But now you're transporting all those students to another school. So even though transportation costs may be increasing, the relative decrease of cost because you've closed a school actually benefits the board. So I think it's important to sort of look at those things in tandem as opposed to just looking at transportation as a standalone cost. Program location, for example, is a big one. What's good for a lot of students is perhaps having programs throughout the city. What ends up happening is if the nearest program to a student is full, then we transport that student to a farther program, or even the farthest program. But the fact is, that's what's good for the student. And we do have those kind of discussions with the boards all the time. And with the superintendents regarding what are some of those special needs and how can we transition those students from the vans back to the regular transportation so that that becomes part of their learning opportunity and developing skills so that they're not reliant on vans all the time, that maybe they could graduate to public transit or to mass transportation. So those conversations actually happen all the time. In terms of the inclement weather for rural versus urban, what our issue is because we have programs everywhere and because we are so interconnected and we have multiple runs, we might have a bus that starts in a rural area and actually finishes their runs in a suburban or urban area and then heads back home at the end of the day. We have drivers who actually might clear from, or drive their cars from one zone to go pick up their bus in a different zone and then go and do their work and then have to go back. So it was getting too complex to be able to differentiate which zone would we cancel given the variety of weather conditions that we have here in Ottawa. And then being able to communicate that accurately. Like we can, sometimes we're finding that the radio stations, the TV stations aren't even communicating a canceled service for like the entire region, let alone trying to figure out which zone is canceled, rural or urban and that. So in the end, we really determined it's too complex to be able to split it out and be able to cancel one end or another on any given day.
Trustee Campbell.
Thank you very much. Thank you for Trustee Fisher for his question. Just a follow-up, actually, if you don't mind. So the working group, I can see the value in the working group that you mentioned. Has it been possible in the past, or do you see that being possible in the future if it hasn't been done, to help model effectively the impact of accommodation decisions? Say if we had 3 or 4 accommodation scenarios to look at. We could say, okay, what will the costs throw up in terms of, because we usually have staff have a fairly good read on the staff costs and building maintenance costs, what have you, with respect to various scenarios, but not necessarily so much with respect to the transportation impact. And of course, that's quite an integrated cost in a sense with respect to the decision making involved. So I guess just a general question with respect to OSTA's ability to model various scenarios for boards.
Well, we've actually been involved in some modeling in the recent accommodation reviews. Certainly when we were part of the Merivale discussion for the IB program, for example, and switching over the IB program or part of it for Colonel By, we were definitely in there talking about transportation options and what the bell time could be and how the modes of transportation are related to bell time. So it was actually a very integrated process. So we do have those kind of decisions. I think the complexity of sort of an area accommodation review where multiple schools could be closing or a number of high schools, those are a little more general because that becomes too complex. We have many routes that are doubled and tripled up with a variety of schools with the OCDSB and the OCSB, and we'd almost have to replan that entire area. So sometimes those costs a little more general, but we do have those conversations now, and we would continue to have them.
Thank you. Just for clarification, with the generation of a plus, minus, or dollar range impact as a result of the modeling exercise, or?
We do try to give the incremental savings or increase generally.
Okay, seeing no other speakers, Thank you so much for taking the time to come to speak with us tonight, Ms. Kiriako. We always appreciate it. And we will move, we have no delegations this evening, so we will go to the receipt of our Advisory Committee annual reports, and we'll look for Nancy Dean from the Arts Advisory Committee first. And you have 10 minutes to speak to us, and then the trustees can ask whatever, or the committee can ask whatever questions they'd like.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. I'm a little nervous. So my name is Nancy Dean, and I am the Arts Advisory, or the Advisory Committee Chair. And it's my pleasure to present our annual report to you. Just basically starting, our committee has been around since 1987 with its principal mandate basically to support, yes, to support and encourage arts education for all students. And also to provide a liaison between the parents, OCDSB staff members, the board and community, and also community arts organizations. It's basically our mission to advocate for a deeper integration of arts as a mean to bridge. And it's great. We are part of the strategic plan process, and we definitely believe that arts is a bridge to being socially responsible and equity, to arts as being a way of caring, a culture of caring, as well as a culture of innovation. It is widely researched and strongly validated that engaging in the creative process is critical to our future success, and exploration through the arts allows our worlds to coexist, to unite together, and even expand all at the same time. We can, as one of the great quotes is, "You are allowed to be a masterpiece and a work in progress at the same time." So we, this year, we did enter the year with quite lofty goals. However, we had our amazing chair, Ingrid Dabringer, step down fairly about the third way into the year. And so I had the pleasure of taking over, and so have been working just in stepping into that, as well as getting a better understanding of the whole committee and what our goals are. So based on that, we adjusted our goals, and one definitely was to continue to be part of the strategic planning process. And participated through the PIC Advisory Committee focus group, and ensured our members participated in the thought exchange, and also the network of our community and our members to very, very strongly and engage in the thought exchange process to ensure that the arts and the creative process have a much wider presence. We also were, our other was to try to build more community partners. And we engaged in just reinvigorating our membership. We are slowly decreasing in terms of numbers, and so we reinvigorated our current members and invited everyone to come back again and visit us. So we have a new a member, and also a student representative as well, which is something we haven't had in the past, which was great. And lastly, we continue to support the arts instructional coaches, which is part of the reason they came to be was due to the amazing dedication and work of the Arts Committee, the Arts Advisory Committee, to bring this forth. The Arts Advisory Committee members, the Arts Advisory coaches, there are 2 of them in our board, but we are very fortunate. Part of my report is to bring to you a little awareness and hopefully a little warm fuzzies in terms of what they have been doing, and some of the learning and engagement that has been going on because of their hard work. Typically, the Arts Advisory coaches work in schools through small groups. Part of the reasoning they came to be was done through research. The delivery of the arts, due to resources, has definitely changed, and there are not as many qualified or teachers that actually have an arts background. And therefore, what that has caused is that some of the staff are not as comfortable in providing an experience for the students that could be as adequate as before. So the arts instructional coaches assist staffing in particular to overcome some of their fears, as well as also working with the students. In the past, due to the shortage of excuse my language, replacement staff coming into play, it's become much more difficult for the staff to come out of their class settings to get training and teaching, and therefore the arts instructional coaches have now switched their model and actually gone directly into the schools and working with small groups within the schools as well. One of the most incredible aspects is actually modeling for the teacher how to work with the students and how to engage the students in the creative process. And even though there's a negative piece of not having enough staffing to be placed, it also gave us a much better, more effective model to actually present the arts to students. Assisting staff also, because now they're in the schools, it's been great. Other staff members have realized that these art coaches are available, and therefore other disciplines, math, sciences, have now been looking to these arts advisory committees or arts advisory coaches to assist them in furthering their course through the arts. So looking at involving things like math through creating even tableaus, or telling a story through images, and maybe even describing the scientific method through stop motion animation, for example. Great experiences. So in addition to that, the arts instructional coaches are also themselves increasing our partnerships within the community with the National Arts Centre, with Desserts. As you already know, there's lots of work with Desserts and murals and things like that. So we're continuing to do that. Here's a couple of pictures of some staff members having some fun and learning a little bit about how to incorporate arts. And even experiencing the arts themselves allows them to be a greater teacher. So the Arts Advisory Committee members do their work throughout the OCDSB in different areas, so mostly with elementary, with intermediate, and secondary. Here's a couple of things that they've been doing through the K-8 to support the arts. Mask making, which is an amazing thing. Also working with teaching teachers how to use music with your ukulele training. That is certainly something, a person that does not know music, teaching music is very, very difficult. So they've actually gone in and allowed teachers to have kits borrowed for the whole year, as well as some easy to learn ukulele lessons that they can engage. And this has been a great way for our language learners, ESLs, French as well, to engage together. Also, another thing that's been happening is puppets. We have been able to get puppets into the ELD, the English language learners as well, which, as you can tell, how much fun can you have with puppets? And puppets, they just take over, and learning happens in a totally different way. The dynamics of the classroom changes immediately. Another, of course, is through the mural projects that have been happening at Hawthorne, and unfortunately I don't have a picture of that. One thing that has been happening, though, is through the grade 7 and 8s is linoleum printmaking, and a lot of teachers, even just learning how to touch materials, how to work with them, and the instructional coaches have done that as well by allowing the teachers to show them how to work with the materials. In addition, the secondary, the focus this year for the arts instructional coaches were the intermediate. Through research, it was found that in the secondary classes, a lot less students were choosing arts as a way to go, as something to experience, because they've never really had success with it earlier on. So this year, the focus for the arts instructional coaches were specifically to target the grade 7 and 8s, and in particular, some of the ones that are in the elementary schools where they don't have as much resources as they do in the secondary schools. So the focus has been towards that. Sorry, I'm getting... One thing I want to show you is 2 different projects that have happened is upcycling clothing with student designs and technology. And this is a project where the students designed their own sort of logo, designed it. There is a technology called the Cricut machine, which actually takes your design and cuts it out. They cut it out of material that you can iron onto t-shirts, and then they've created their own designs using used clothing. And it's just, the whole aspect is, again, a wonderful thing. And I see my time is up, and I just want to share with you what we're going to be focusing on. What we would like for consideration for you, for us, is to continue with the advising to the strategic plan, inclusion of the arts and the creative process in all areas, increase awareness and engagement in our committee as a whole, as that is something of dire importance for the future.
Okay, great.
Any questions?
Yes, no, thank you. Trustee Scott.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you very much for your presentation this evening. It's always interesting to hear firsthand about these things. One correction, I'm afraid, to your written report, and that is on folio 1 of our package. In the introduction, the Arts Advisory Committee was established in 1987 under the guidance of Trustee Marjorie Lawry. Although Teresa Kavanaugh certainly was one of our trustees who was active as our representative to ACA. But my question, Madam Chair, is in terms of the reinvigorating of the membership, which I think is a very important. ACA has ebbed and flowed many times over the years, but from a perspective of the current members of the ACA, would it be worthwhile to look critically at the existing terms of reference and the policy that established the ACA to see whether there might be a more workable structure or whether changes in the mandate would be indicated? Would that be helpful from your point of view?
In creating this annual report, those particular questions also came up to me as well, and I totally agree. I believe that would be very helpful in that being one of our focus next year. Come to review that, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any? Trustee Campbell.
Thank you very much, and thank you for helping have the arts make learning come alive for students in the schools. It's important and enriching. I did want to focus on the recommendation, or I'm not sure whether it's a recommendation, I guess that's my question, with respect to support for the arts instructional coaches. On, I guess, maybe the 3rd page of your text, you say future considerations for the OCDSB, etc. And then you say, I just want to understand it better, to invest in teacher arts-informed pedagogy capacity building by providing more resources to our arts instructional coaches. So the advice, as I understand it, is not to add to the number of arts instructional coaches, but to provide the existing complement with more resources of some sort. And I gather that this is a future consideration, not a current budget consideration. So I just like to understand, if you could maybe confirm or clarify what you're recommending or suggesting there, that would be helpful.
Yes, and as I said earlier on, when the chair had stepped down, we had to readjust what our plans were, and definitely, unfortunately, we weren't able to actually come together with what exactly we wanted to ask, if there was an ask, but definitely we want to keep you, have the arts as on top of mind. Unfortunately, we cannot give you a particular ask, And we understand, based on the budget considerations this year, it would be very difficult to do more than what you already have been doing and what you were able to do this year. And based on what the ministry comes down with in terms of budget funding for the arts, we'll also, so we have no specific ask at the moment.
Great. Are there any other questions for Ms. Steen? Seeing none, thank you so much for coming with your report tonight, and thank you for your continued leadership in arts education in our district. And we will look for Elaine Hales to come from the Advisory Committee on Equity.
Hello, everyone. So I'm Elaine Hales, and I'm here to present the Advisory Committee on Equity Annual Report for the year 2018-2019. So it is said that transformation occurs in conversations. Conversations rooted in diverse voices and experiences make up the heart and backbone of the OCDSB Advisory Committee of Equity, ACE. And it is through courageous, challenging, and necessary conversation that ACE members share and listen for relevant and creative possibilities to advise the Board of Trustees on the review, development, implementation, and monitoring of all policies that support student achievement and well-being. In the 2018-2019 school year, ACE continued to liaison with community stakeholders, parents, students, and community partners to strengthen their recommendations for the district to foster equitable, safe, and inclusive learning and working environments. As part of its evolution, different voices enter and leave ACE conversation space yearly. We acknowledge and thank Trustee Erica Bronovan, as trustee representatives, Stacey Ann Morris, Nadine Clark, Leslie Giddin for their contribution to the conversation over the years. And we welcome Trustee Rob Campbell and Chris Ellis as the board representatives. Trustee Lynn Scott, Raylene Aluru from, excuse, I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly, Tunkasuvinak Inui, Sonia Nadon Campbell, and Sue Groundland from SEAC, Clara Morgan and Sue Rice, Equity Instructional Coach, who have all brought different perspective and experience to enrich ACE conversation. So our 2018-29 priorities and accomplishments in 2018-2019 school year, along with its continued focus on engagement, research, and valuing diverse types of knowledge. ACE also focused on strengthening the communication channels with communities and trustees to ensure that they have access to the reports that capture the rich conversation generated during ACE meetings. In addition, ACE participated in the professional development for advisory committee chairs to ensure the conversation space is navigated with ease. A brief summary of these priorities are provided below. So for engagement in 2018-2019, ACE engagement conversation focused on the following key areas: ensuring diverse voices are connected and included to identify systemic racism, and opportunity, tools, and resources are available to address them; strengthening a two-way communication between communities and ACE and the board. We also developed a communication and marketing membership outreach campaign and applied a diversity, equity, and inclusive lens on district priorities, ensuring diverse voices are connected and included. With its revised mandate and having a seat at the Committee of the Whole table, ACE expanded opportunities for communities to engage in two ways. It created a community voice standing item at the beginning of each meeting agenda. This demonstrated ACE's commitment to put the voices of parents, students, and communities first. The intention is to hear their stories and, whenever possible, their proposed solutions to inform how ACE can support identifying and addressing systemic barriers that currently impact equity of access and opportunities within the OCDSB. These stories are also a qualitative data source to inform ACE recommendations to the board. ACE also added a conference line for members to be able to attend meetings virtually if they are unable to do so in person, so that quorum is achieved. We have also found that this has expanded avenues for parents, teachers, and community partners to to participate in these important conversations. So strengthening a two-way communications with communities and the board. ACE strengthened two-way communication channels with its key stakeholders this year by realigning the distribution of ACE minutes with board service to ensure trustees and community members have access to ACE minutes on the website. ACE also implemented a motion action tracking report and long-range planning process to enhance transparency regarding the status of key priorities, including feedback from the board and district staff regarding ACE recommendations. We also, when it comes to developing a communication and marketing membership outreach campaign, ACE revised mandates strengthen the voice of parents with students currently enrolled in OCDSB schools and community represented from organizations and agencies representing and or serving OCDSB parents and students. To this end, while preparing to develop its membership outreach campaign, ACE revised its membership composition to ensure that distinct subgroups within the Indigenous, racialized, 2S, GLBTQ+, and person with disabilities communities were listed to ensure they would also receive the invitation to appoint members. As well, members believed it was important to include the contribution and difference that ACE is making within the district in its promotional materials. This will enable interested individuals or organizations to see how their time will be invested and to envision how they can add or expand the conversation. A membership committee was struck and tasked to pull the campaign together with the support of the communities department. To the end, the team was able to identify the membership outreach theme of Together We Can Make a Difference and drafted invitation letters, a poster and web banner that will be on our site for the duration of the campaign from the end of May to the end of August 29. In addition, the communication department will engage in social media campaign via Facebook and Twitter. Applying our diversity and equity lens on the district. During the 2018-2019 school year, ACE was invited to provide a diversity, equity, and inclusive lens on the following district priority. And since I'm almost running out of time, you'll see that we contributed to the strategic plan, to the budget overview. We also moved a motion that the board explore funding to support mental health through an equity lens, especially for students who self-identify as First Nation, Inuit, and Métis, and for male students of Black African descent. ACE was pleased to hear that the motion was heavily discussed at Cowie and amended as follows. Moved by Trustee Bronovan, seconded by Trustee Campbell, that the following motion be referred to staff to provide additional information, including consultation with the Advisory Committee on Equity prior to presentation at the board meeting in September 29. Moved by Trustee Ellis, seconded by Trustee Bronovan, that the board directs staff to explore and report on funding to support mental health through an equity lens, especially for students who self-identify as First Nation, Métis, Inuit, for male students of African descent, that the board directs staff to evaluate through an equity lens barriers to assess mental health services within the OCDSB, especially for students who self-identify as First Nation, Métis, Inuit, and for male students of African descent. So as a result of this motion, staff requested that ACE input in the draft mental health strategy, and you could read more about that. Identity-based data. We also contributed information about that, and again, you can read about that. I really want to get to the community forum with students, which was very, very, very powerful. So for the second year, ACE invited students to share their lived experience. The students represented the three major student voice forums in the district: the Indigenous Students Symposium, the Rainbow Youth Forum, and the Black Students Forum. And so a summary of their stories are provided. I'll just touch on it a bit. So the Indigenous voices: little programming or information to engage Indigenous students in my school, but in the district, Indigenous Youth Symposium and Leadership Camp felt more welcome, and you'll see more comments. For the trans voice, Rainbow Youth Forum provided 2 SLGBTQ 2SLGBTQ plus students with a safe place to explore the issues students experience in schools helped me to come to terms with feelings to shape and fully express self, and of course a lot more conversation there. And then the Black and Muslim voice. Although attends a multicultural school, still feel like a visible minority as a Black Muslim man. So since I only have 40 seconds left, you can read the rest of the report. But the key next step, as the district becomes more intentional about its journey from diversity to equity, ACE 2018-2019 conversation to once again put in space the following recommendations. Establish a central equity office of equity within the district, including a superintendent whose portfolio is exclusively equity. Prepare a district-wide equity and inclusive education strategy and action plan with measurable indicator. Outline concrete initiative that will honor the board commitment to honor the UN Decade for People of African Descent. Develop a diversity, equity, and inclusive lens to support the work of schools and department, including when consultations are being conducted, to ensure multiple ways that responses can be gathered. And enhance equity page to include resource for staff, students, and the community, which would include events, videos, pictures, celebrative of our success. And in conclusion, a special thank you to ACE members and the community guests for their ongoing commitment to contribute to the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board effort to foster welcoming, caring, and inclusive learning and working environment. Thank you to our community members, Elaine Hales, Clara Morgan, Emeka Newman, Harvey Brown, Nadine Clark, whose commitment has been greatly appreciated. A special thank you to our community agency reps, Jane Field, Youth Service Bureau, Lisa McRoy from the Family Service Ottawa, and Ruth Sword, and Jean Goulet from the Spiritual Care Group in Secondary School, and Rayleigh Olurge. We are thankful to our trustee representative, Rob Campbell and Chris Ellis, as well as we wish to recognize trustee Donna Blackbird and Lynn Scott, who regularly attended the meetings to provide support to the equity work that is unfolding in the OCDSB. We also acknowledge the regular presence of the following community representatives: Professor Tim Stanley, Bob Dawson, and June Gervin. And finally, we would like to acknowledge the ongoing support and leadership of Dorothy Baker, Superintendent of Curriculum, Jackie Lawrence, Diversity and Equity Coordinator, and Nicole Giroux, Committee Coordinator.
Good job. Thank you. We do have a few questions for you. Trustee Campbell.
I can speak quicker if I try.
Okay.
The great report. Thank you. Very full, very serious report. I did want to focus actually in terms of a question on the key next steps, which you outlined there. And I guess would like to understand this. I guess the status. Are these recommendations that you see ACE potentially moving for next year, or conversations? It's unclear to me if these are existing motions or recommendations that have been made in the past by ACE, or these are motions or recommendations that are going to be coming forward at a later point. Are these, or maybe these are not formal motions, but they're consensus opinions? Or I guess I'd just like to understand what the status of those key next step items is, and the work that you see with respect to them, I guess, this coming year at ACE. Maybe if you could clarify that a little bit. Thank you.
Okay. I know that this is from my recollection. I may not be 100% correct, but I know that some of these recommendations have been made before. Some are old, some are new. The status, I know that in our meetings that we do discuss them, and we're trying to figure out ways to move them forward. So I think they're definitely ongoing, and definitely we will be discussing these recommendations at our next meeting, and of course with the trustees who are present at our meeting, we will definitely bring this to them all again.
Thank you. I'd just like to congratulate yourself and your leadership on the committee, but also all the committee participants and support personnel as well. I personally have been extremely pleased how ACE has come along this year and burst emotion and seems to really hitting it in terms of dialogue. It's potentially very useful to the district, and I wanted to thank you. Thank you.
I also like to say that I think that ACE has progressed because we've had the immense support of staff and trustees who have come to our meetings, who've helped us navigate the school system, who's answered our questions. Sometimes we've been very harsh, but they've stuck around and they've held our hands and supported us. So again, thanks again to Dorothy Baker and Jackie Lawrence because, and Nicole, because they've really held our hands.
Trustee Lyra.
So I want to open by saying thank you for writing the report. I understand the importance of the student forums and the youth forums. My question is about the Black Youth Forum and why it's labeled the Black and Muslim Voice in the report. I'm just sort of wondering why it was labeled as the Black and Muslim Voice if it's the Black Youth Forum. And I understand there's some overlap, but it's a Venn diagram, not a circle. So I'm just sort of wondering.
My understanding is just to reflect, when we had our meeting, we had a Black Muslim youth who came in, and these are some of his words. So we just wanted to be very specific to let you know it was a Black Muslim student who voiced these concerns. And I think he did also attend the Black Student Forum.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Seeing no other questions, thank you so much for coming out tonight, Elaine. It's always nice to see you, and thank you for your ongoing work on this very important topic.
Thank you.
Next, we have the Advisory Committee on Alternative Schools, but we do not have anyone to present that report, so trustees will need to just read that one and email questions somewhere if you have any, I guess. And then we will look for Eleanor Heap to come for the Advisory Committee on Extended Day Program and Childcare.
Hi, I'm here tonight to present on behalf of the Advisory Committee on the Extended Day and the Childcare within the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. The first thing I think I will comment on is that in December we received the resignation from the previous chair, Holly Grenier, who had been the chair for I think 2.5 years. So she stepped down from the committee effective December 31st this year, and at this time that position has not yet been filled, which is why I am here today. The advisory committee was formed in 2014, 4 years after the extended day program and the child care program had started within the Ottawa-Carleton District School Board. Currently, we have 63 programs and 5,663 children enrolled in them. That is a growth from the first year in 2010 when we had 4 programs and 125 children. Currently, it's about 13% of the elementary students' population who attend our extended day programs. That does not include children who attend the 31 third-party operator extended day programs. The extended day program is a cost recovery program, and currently parents pay anywhere from $22.50 a day to $27 per day, and that would be for attending the program. That would be if they attended both morning and afternoon. There are individual fees for any parent who chooses to enroll their child mornings only or afternoon only or any combination thereof. There was no fee increase in this school year 2018-19, and there is no fee increase planned for the school year 2019-2020. As I've previously said, currently we have 63 programs that the OCDSB operates, and we have 31 programs that our third-party partners operate, which are licensed childcare programs. The Ottawa-Carleton District School Board also operates 2 infant, toddler, and preschool programs. One is located at Woodruff High School, one is located at Rideau High School, in the midst of moving across the field to Queen Elizabeth Public School. The committee met 3 times this year, October 24th, January 30th, and the 9th of May. Some of the work that they were consulted on was very great conversation around the strategic plan, a lot of comments and a lot of input. Review of the parent surveys, which went out in the spring of 2018, so the results were reviewed by the existing committee this year, and the attached memo to trustees is also attached to this document. The fee structure for 2019-20, the general operations of the Ottawa-Carleton District's Extended Day Program and Childcare Programs, and one of the we heard delegations this year from parents who expressed some concern about violent incidents within the Extended Day Program and air conditioning. Next steps, a call went out to have new members join the committee, and so there are 4 new members that will be joining the committee as voting members. They were parents. The call for parents went out through communications, through school newsletters, through the OCDSB newsletter. It was on Twitter and Facebook, and we received 17 applicants. So we have 4 parents have accepted to sit as members, and we have 4 parents who have accepted to sit as alternates. So hopefully one of the greatest hindrances this committee has had is attendance at the meetings. We hope that this will help have members present. The committee will continue to provide ongoing support and advice to the Board of Directors as required. The committee does believe that it's time to review the policies and provide some input into the current policy, which may need some changes to tweak what we are actually operating as now. We are looking to improve methods of feedback and communication from the stakeholders, basically our third-party operators and our parents. So we have lots to do next year. I think that's it.
Great. We have a couple of questions. Trustee Lyra.
So I just have a quick question about the parents who are putting their child in for 4 days a week, 3 days a week, or 2 days a week. I'm just sort of wondering what the reasons people give for only putting their child in fewer than 5 days a week.
I think that was one of the greatest surprises to me. I came from the childcare community into the school board, and as within the childcare community, I think we all believed that if a parent needed childcare, they needed childcare 5 days a week, morning to afternoon, and 12 months of the year. I think that's been one of the greatest lessons I've learned, is families are all very different, and family needs are all very different, and so families don't all need 5 days a week. We have an example would be a nurse. A nurse works four days and then has 5 days off. They work 12-hour shifts. When they're on their 5 days off, they don't need childcare. Police officers, ambulances. We have many families within our extended day programs who really do not require care. Families are also very cognizant that the cost of the extended day program, if they're able to manage within their family situation to have a parent take children to school in the morning and they only need aftercare for that, then that's a great situation for that family, and we have set the program up to try to accommodate the needs of families, and flexibility is definitely one of the greatest appreciations parents have for the program.
All right, thank you.
Trustee Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm certainly pleased that there's an expectation under next steps that you will be reviewing the policy to provide input on extended day programming in childcare, because that was a very important part of the mandate. However, when I look at the structure, even with some new parent members, the number of vacancies that shows in the chart on page 18 of our package is alarming. And as I recall, when this committee was first established, it was established at a time when we were still in the process of developing some of our programming. We were just barely almost finished the phase-in of having the extended day programs in all of our schools and so on. So I guess my question is, would there be interest also in reviewing the policy that established the committee to see whether there is a different or a better structure or a difference in mandate in terms of helping this to be a committee that people will want to participate in, that they will be able to participate in, and that will actually be able to provide us with very useful advice.
Yes, through you, Chair. I'd like to talk about just the mandate of the committee and I guess what the intent was. I think it's really important for us to review the policy, but also to understand how is it that people can provide us with input, because I think one of the challenges we have with this particular grouping is that the parent members utilize the service because they have young children, which means it makes it difficult for them to come out in evenings because they have young children. So we've benefited more from having input via phone, for example. So if we require input on a particular issue, how can we get that input so that it's robust and meaningful for us to do our work? So I think in 2019, 2020, we do need to look at what is a better way for us to get input on important matters.
Thank you for that. I've always said that one of the real problems with parents is that they all have children, and that can make it sometimes challenging to participate as individuals in things that require people to be out of their homes.
Okay. So, Trustee Fisher.
That's the second time we've done that to you, sorry. Quick question. Across the district, I know that we have a number of purpose-built spaces for preschool programs. Are we fully operational in all those spaces, or do we have some schools that have the space but don't have programs yet?
Through you, Chair, we still have some spaces that are not currently with programs. Some RFPs have just gone out recently.
Do you suspect that they will be filled for the upcoming year? Because I know some of them have been sitting empty for a number of years now.
I think for September, most likely not, maybe January though.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, thank you both for all of the work that you do for us. We really appreciate it. And thanks for coming out tonight to present your report. We are going to take the 9 o'clock break now. We're going to take a very, very fast 9 o'clock break, and hopefully I'll be back in 6 or 7 minutes. Okay, if I can, I got quorum in the room, I believe. I see quorum at the table, so I will reconvene the meeting. You can stand, that's fine, as long as you're at the table. And I will look for Jody Alexander and Monique Manach to come with the Indigenous Education Advisory Council Committee report.
Bajashig, welcome. Welcome to our unceded, unsurrendered Algonquin territory. Monique Manach and Dushnakos. My name is Monique Manach. I'm a member of the Algonquins of Barrier Lake, also known as Rapid Lake. And we're here tonight to talk about the Indigenous Education Advisory Council and our report for this year. And I'm going to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Jody Alexander.
Gwayani, Sego, Jody Alexander, Nidishnakas, Pikwaknagan, and Dunjaba. Hello, I'm Jody Alexander. I'm an Algonquin from Pikwaknagan. And as Monique said, we're presenting the report with respect to the Indigenous Education Advisory Council. And as you know, this is our first year having created and established the policy. And this year we were very excited that we had really fabulous turnout to our initial meetings. We had a number of people that were interested in being a part of the council, which is very, very encouraging to us, seeing that we had a large number of community members, community partners, parents and families that came out, students that also came out to come and give their input to the council. So that was really one of the highlights that for me, and also the fact that at every meeting that we've had, we've always had student participation. And I was here just a couple of weeks ago, and you heard me talk about how important it is to me to listen to the community, listen to the parents, listen to the students. So that's one of the things that I think my role is on the committee, is again to listen, but not only to listen, but also respond. And you'll see in the report some of the recommendations and some of the next steps that we're hoping to take for next year. And I know they may not all be achieved next year, they may be ongoing. But for example, I wanted to point out that there are some student-led presentations. We had some conversations about respectful language and communication and creating safe spaces for Indigenous students in all areas of the OCDSB, and that those items, those recommendations will be included in our board action plan for next year, and that is one of the mandates that the Advisory Council does provide us with action items for our board action plan for Indigenous education. And I also wanted to thank Wendy Hoff for being the trustee that comes and participates with us. And I'll just turn it back over to Monique if there's anything else that she would like to add.
I also just want to thank the students and the elders who came out, who participated. As you can see in our key next steps, the creating of safe spaces for the students, the creating of smudging spaces, of ceremonial spaces for the students, a place where they can feel safe to participate in their cultural activities is a priority. The students were absolutely amazing. They are the reason we are here, and they are the people that we are listening to the most. We're very fortunate to have elders like Albert Dumont and Sektuki Jomi, and we consolidated the committee and created the structure, and are very, very interested and dedicated to an Indigenous-led process, which we will be carrying out throughout the upcoming year, and actually that's the basis of our mandate, is definitely focusing on an Indigenous-led process. And I think that's all for me.
Okay, great, thank you. Trustee Campbell.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for your presentation. I enjoy reading the IAC minutes. They're always very, very rich, covering a lot of material. I do have a couple questions based on the submission. I note under recommendations you suggest leveraging data from community partners, and then down below as a key next step, incorporating OCAP principles with respect to research conducted with partners, wherever. And I only have a passing familiarity with OCAP. My understanding is it's a long developed set of principles, often dealing with like federal partners and this kind of thing. It'd be very interesting to me to see how that applies in a school board setting, and in terms of data ownership and access rights, particularly as we look forward to disaggregating data and the analyses that we might want to do around that. And I also wonder, and I'd like your comment on this, it is a question, whether you see this as these principles potentially as being applicable outside of the Indigenous framework, perhaps to racialized black or other racialized groups within the OCDSB community, or do you see this as more something that's really only applicable to the Indigenous community?
I'll begin with an overview of the OCAP principles. OCAP was created by in a response to the amount of research that has been conducted in the Indigenous community. They say we are the most researched people in the world. The First Nations Information Governance Association, I believe, are the developers of OCAP, and this organization is responsible for capacity building within communities, whether urban or reserve. We actually began discussing it in response to the surveys that were being done. And what we're looking for is certainly access to the information, access to, if we have certain questions or certain information that we want to have as a result of the survey. They were saying that there are various questions we can ask after the survey is completed, and that way we will be able to find out more information about our community. Whether or not other communities wish to adopt OCAP is certainly their prerogative. We won't, they want to build that capacity, absolutely. But we just felt that it was very important for our community, mainly because of all the research that has been done, and also because we wanted to be able to avail ourselves of the data and make sure that it was available to us, and that we would be able to use it in as situations rise.
Thank you very much. I'll be very interested to see how that turns out on the ground. And then the last question through you, Madam Chair, is under review policy, you suggest, the committee suggests that the IAC feels strongly that the review of the composition of the council is necessary. And I was just sort of wondering if I could get maybe a bit of background on that. And that's it. Thank you.
Sure, I'll give you a little background on that. Many of our conversations early on are probably our first 2 or 3 meetings, really centered around the composition, the suggested composition that we created for IAC. That being that we have 2 First Nations representatives, 2 Inuit representatives, and 2 Métis representatives. And the conversation at our meetings really had a lot to do with identity and the fact that First Nation, Métis, and Inuit are terms that have been imposed upon us by government. And so we had a lot of conversation about the fact that this is Algonquin territory, and so we should have a large contingent of Algonquin members on the council. And we also recognize that there's a large Inuit population, so much of the conversation was how do we ensure that we have the necessary individuals on the council, and that we want to be able to review that going forward was the hope.
Thank you very much.
Trustee Boothby.
Thank you, and thank you for the report. On the last page of the report under key next steps, number 2 is creating safe spaces. How would you give us advice on how to go about doing that? Should it be more student-led, or what would be your advice on how we do that in other schools?
One of the initiatives that is being done in some of the schools is creating a lodge for the students, and that lodge is, the design and development of that lodge has been student-led to this point, and we think that's a wonderful start. Obviously there are other, smudging is something that the Inuits don't, but other Métis and Indigenous students do. And of course it's, there's the issue of the ventilation. So at this point sometimes students are able to smudge in the principal's office, I think, but just creating these spaces where the students can smudge if they need to, can have access to elders, have access to the cultural knowledge, and have access to those who can help them if they want to participate in ceremony.
Thank you. Thank you.
If I could just add as well, it is really important that students lead these conversations, but equally as important I think it is that we bring in elders from the community to guide students and schools to do that in a good way. And there are many students in the district that perhaps don't know or have a strong connection to their community, to their culture, and so I think that through interaction with elders and community members that we'll be able to make sure that we're doing those creating those spaces in a good way.
Great. Trustee Penny.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for this report. I'm just wondering if you had any comments on the OCDSB or even the provincially on our progress on calls to action 62 and 63.
Pertaining to this report, I would have to say 62 and 63 are directly related to all education, and I think that the recommendations that we have in the report, our thoughts are that we are supporting those calls to action. I'm trying to think of maybe a specific example, but maybe if we looked at in improving cultural competency in the key next steps, those could be considered some of the ways that we're addressing those. The council does have people that are able to provide us with guidance in many areas. I don't know if that specifically answers your question. Are you thinking more of a monitoring perspective?
I'm just wondering if the council itself has been supporting or feels that there's progress being made. And I mean, there was some minor progress on the curriculum side a little bit from the province. Not really great, but it was minor. But if you have any further comments on how we can make that better, if there's anything we can do.
I think that's a question that I would require some more thinking on. I think we are moving in a good direction, and the Indigenous education team is supporting the educators in becoming more aware, more culturally competent, and really encouraging staff to infuse Indigenous perspectives, history, and current issues into their programs every day.
Okay, seeing no other questions?
Well, I just wanted to add that one of the areas that we're looking at particularly is to see how Indigenous culture can be added to all curriculum. I've had the example of when you're building a canoe, you use biology, you use geography, you use math, you use music, you use science, you use so many different areas. And there are many activities that are like that. You know, math through beadwork, that sort of thing. It's a common one. So one of the areas that we're looking at expanding is getting the Indigenous culture woven throughout all curriculum. And in that way, we normalize Indigenous culture, so it simply becomes a part of everyday life for all of the students.
Trustee Fisher.
Thanks, Madam Chair, and I'm glad you raised the point. I think it was it, I'm trying to remember if it was early on in our mandate or if it was before our mandate. We had the pleasure of sitting down and I think having a circle discussion at Gloucester High School, if I recall. I'd certainly like to find perhaps more regular opportunities to speak with the council or perhaps the membership, the leaders, the knowledge holders, because I found that for me as a trustee, you know, extremely powerful, both in terms of my own learning and my own journey in terms of truth and reconciliation, but I think just understanding to the point that you just made about how we can incorporate knowledge and history and culture into everything that we think about here. And obviously, you know, in this particular case, we're talking about, you know, our Indigenous community and students, but I think it equally applied to, you know, our Black students or other students in the board. But I think the more opportunities that we have as a board to directly interact and engage and build relationships and understanding, I think it will improve what we do around this table. I don't want it to become, you know, at the end of the year, because I can't make it to all these subcommittee meetings, right? So I just don't want it to be, you know, we hear from you at the end of the year, and that's the only opportunity I have to engage as a trustee in this conversation. So I know I've raised this point before about how do we perhaps regularize or find opportunities within, you know, September to June to actually sit down and just, you know, build a relationship and understanding. And I'm not sure how we do that, whether it's a dinner or whatever it is, but I think that's incredibly important for what we need to do.
Certainly developing activities with the trustees is something that we look towards in the cultural competency recommendations. Indigenous paradigm is based on relationships, not just relationships with each other, but relationships with the world around us. Our reality is based on relationships, and bringing that worldview into this room and with you, I think, is an important next step. For me, reconciliation is an outcome of truth. And until the truth of the history and the culture of the Indigenous people in what we call Turtle Island, until that has become again normalized, so that everyone is aware, we wouldn't think of breaking treaty rights any more than we would think of, you know, like we don't litter as much as we used to. It's a point of education. So I think you're absolutely right. It would be wonderful to be able to have these activities that are interactive and build relationships, and that's how we learn. That's how we learn from each other, and we learn those truths, and then we will make our way to reconciliation that way.
So we would welcome the opportunity to obviously get together and do some of have some of these conversations and build those relationships. I do want to say, I forgot the last time I was here, that I wanted to say to you, thank you, Miigwech. Your support has, over my past 3 years of being here, has been wonderful. You've always come to me with great questions, and I just want to say thank you so much for your support.
Great. Thank you both for coming and bringing the inaugural report for the council. The addition of this voice and the voices that are represented at the council are very appreciated. Thank you. And Mustafisur Khan with the Parent Involvement Committee, last but certainly not least.
Thank you, Chair, in this meeting for giving me the opportunity. Respectable Chair of the Board of Trustees, respectable Director of Education, all the trustees, Student Senate, above all, the distinguished delegates present at this meeting. I'm really very happy to present annual PIC meeting, annual PIC report 2018-19 on behalf of PIC. As you can see from the PIC annual report that begins on page 29 of your agenda package, I'm not going through line by line, only the important things. Our PIC, indeed a very productive, and I would like to bring your attention to PIC's success and progress throughout the last year. As you might know, the purpose of a parent involvement committee is to support, encourage, and enhance parent engagement at the board level to improve student achievement and well-being. Reference of Ontario Regulation 612 with an amendment 33010. I am thankful and grateful to all the members. You see, there is a list of parent members in our committee. There is a parent members, OCASC members, the community representatives, and there are board staff in it. The PIC members are appointed to either a 1-year or 2-year term. PIC is a parent-led committee. Our chair, vice chair are parents, and the majority of the members are parents. In January 2019, PIC warmly welcomed a new trustee, Wendy Hugg, to the committee. She replaced outgoing trustee Chris Ellis. Chris Ellis, thank you very much. We respectfully acknowledged your efforts, and even you contributed in ministry's consultations in a workshop or whenever it was held in parent conference. Thank you. And wherever I visited in any parents event, I saw trustee Donna Blackburn. And I did not see anywhere apparently, but I am respectful and respectfully acknowledged all the trustees' contributions. Appointment of community representatives. The community representative vacancies were well advertised on various news media between 24th February and 22nd March 2019. District received applications, and there was a membership subcommittee. They carefully revised the applications, and subcommittee recommended Ottawa Network for Education and Parents for Diversity as the two applications that best addressed all of the criteria and needs of PIC. As you might know, the approach of parent engagement based on 3 key areas of activities and actions, which is support, encourage, and connect. Related to support, the activities are like a speaker series, annual parent conference, PIC-led workshop, and related to encourage, climate survey results and strategic planning, pre-consultations, ministry consultation on education reform in Ontario. There are some other activities that data security, parent conference, speaker series as usual, and related to connect, building capacity of the parent members. It is like attending various organizations, a meeting, workshop, establish a membership subcommittee, parent conference, group session for the advisory committees. Speaker series, OCDSB speaker series offers a free presentations to the community and seeks to provide parents and educators with access to leading ideas and information on how parents can effectively contribute in their children's learning at home and at school. We have several speaker series held in the last year. It is written here like a concussion management, cannabis information, unstoppable you, autism, when technology takes over. So these are facilitated by highly resourceful and specialized person. So we are fortunate, the parents and guardians in this district. Parent conference, the parent conference and the school council training day was held on November 3rd in 2018 at Gloucester High School and was once again a great success. Over 200 dedicated parents and guardians attended. Keynote speaker Dr. Peg Dawson, co-authored The Smart But Scattered. She described very resourcefully the connections between the district exit outcomes and executive skills critical to effective learning. PIC bylaws and standing rules. The PIC last approved its bylaws and standing rules in 2011, and they had not undergone any revisions since their development. A small revision was held, but I think it was too shallow. So based on the requirements, and we had new resources, organizations, and based on the needs and situation, we are thinking about to go for another revision. Funding. As part of its commitment to increase the parent engagement across the province, the Ministry of Education provided funding to school councils and PICs to support local initiatives in more effective ways. The OCDSB PIC received $10,000 in 2018 for the parent conference and the speaker series. In addition, 87 school councils shared $84,475 in parent reaching out grant funding. School councils used these funds to work on projects that made an impact on parent outreach related to children's learning and well-being. Now I am telling you the accomplishments that sparkling. Parent Involvement Committee session on the Ministry of Education consultation on education reform. The PIC were very involved and engaged in the Ministry of Education consultation on education reform and at its October 2018 meeting, decided to host a workshop during the 2018 parent conference to collect feedback from parents on the ministry's consultation. We were thrilled to welcome over 30 parents to the workshop. PIC members hosted small groups to discuss the ongoing provincial consultation on public education reform. At our workshop, we were able to provide fellow parents with valuable information on how to participate in the ministry consultations, as well as collect parents' feedback to submit to the ministry. After the conference, we prepared a summary of the workshop and presented it to the Board of Trustees to help bring parents' voice into the OCDSB submission to the Ministry on the provincial consultation on education in Ontario. Our summary was also provided to the Ministry of Education and was posted to the district website to help promote parents' awareness and participation in the ministry consultation. The 2018 Parent Conference was a unique opportunity for us to expand discussions and engage in direct communications with the parents of the district around important challenges that may impact their children's education. We are in the early planning stages for the 2019 Parent Conference and hope to host another workshop designed to engage parents for the 9th of November and join us. Please remember this date. Secondly, PIC hosted focus group. As the district began to develop its 2019-2023 strategic plan, PIC used its January meeting as a focus group session to support the strategies and actions of the strategic plan process. We invited the chairs and the 3 members of all advisory committees to the board to attend and participate in the focus group. That evening, we shared ideas and came together to provide valuable inputs and committee insights into the process. The PIC welcomed the participants from the Special Education Advisory Committee, in short SEAC, the Advisory Committee on Equity, ACE, the Advisory Committee on Arts, and the Indigenous Education Advisory Council, IAC. We worked together in small groups to develop strategies and actions for the following themes: curriculum, teaching and learning, school environment, student support. We hope to continue the work on these elements as we work on our PIC plan in September 2019. This year, I was also fortunate to be a part of professional development training for OCDSB Advisory Committee chairs on parliamentary procedures, rules for making motions, the role and the techniques to ensure an orderly meeting. The training we received from Dr. Atul Kapoor, professional registered parliamentarian, was really excellent, and I am sure I speak for the chair and vice chairs of the other advisory committees when I submit the learning has already been put into practice. In my capacity as the chair of PIC, I also participated and attended in the following events, the committees and workshops. Community Fair, Recovery Day Rally, hosted by City of Ottawa, 110 Laurier Avenue. It was held in September 15th in 2018. Roundtable discussion on OCDSB Mental Health Strategy, Confederation Education Center, which was held in September 18th in 2018. School year calendar 2019-2020 meeting workshop for elementary and secondary first session at OCDSB. On behalf of PIC, I attended. It was held in November 19th, 2018. Intercultural community event at Sir John A. Macdonald building. MP invited me and I was fortunate to attend there. It was held in December 3rd in 2018. School year calendar 2019-2020 meeting workshop for elementary and secondary, which was the second session at the OCDSB. On behalf of PIC, I was also attended. The session was held in December 20th in 2018. Community workshop at Service Coordination for People with Developmental Disabilities. It was held in April 12th in 2019.
Chair
Community event, a date with diversity.
Are you just about finished?
Yes,
I'm
done.
Okay.
Thank you. A date with diversity, journeying from diversity to equity. How can we foster equitable and inclusive environment to support learning and well-being, a sense of belonging to the entire OCDSB community. So at last, the draft of 2019-2023 strategic plan outlines parent engagement as a key performance indicator. PIC members have expressed an interest in providing parents with additional resource documents. Together, we can make the district a more inclusive place for our children. Thank you everyone for listening, and I would appreciate your question, how we can contribute, and I would be very happy to answer, please.
Great, thank you. Trustee Campbell.
thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the evident seriousness with which you and your colleagues treat this work. It's important. I was drawn to the fact that you've scored two new, I guess, organizational reps on the PIC, the Network for Education and Parents for Diversity. So that's exciting news. I'm sure that they'll contribute quite a lot to the PIC. So congratulations on that. It's in your report, and you referred to it as well, with respect to the importance of engagement for amongst encouraging engagement by parents in various ways, particularly perhaps in from more marginalized communities and that kind of thing. I know that some schools are without school councils. Not that that's the only way in which a parent can participate. There are others. And I guess I would look forward to the continued work of the PIC in terms of encouraging parent participation where it perhaps traditionally has been lower or weaker in the district. I think that may be important. And I'll just look for a comment, I guess, if there is one, Madam Chair, through you. And wrapping it up in your looking forward section, you refer quite correctly to the new strategic plans having parent engagement as a key performance indicator. And so it would be, I think, interesting input from the PIC in terms of what should be measured, particularly with maybe there's more than one measure that's appropriate in terms of particularly, as I say, certain communities and maybe overall district-wide as well. And I look forward to perhaps the input and work of the PIC in that regard. I don't know if there's a comment, Madam Chair, or not, but thank you.
Thank you very much for your question and acknowledging the efforts of Parent Involvement Committee. The thing is that we had a series of thought exchange process, and which is a part of multi-year strategic planning. So the preliminary stage is completed, and we got a tremendous feedback and output based on that. A district school board formulated a process by which they can go forward to the next years. The thing is that it is to be more participatory ways. Here needs the supports from the students and their ideas and the trustees. Education is a partnership, which is among students, parents, teachers, principals, vice principals, superintendents, communities, government. We need to work together. In true sense, we are so much less without each other. So, which is my thinking based on the experience, we need to provide an effective partnership, and which is a functional collaboration. Like a lot of strategies and activities are providing the services provided by the public and government as well. So we need to integrate those by which our students would be more benefited. And we need to find out the system barriers, which is the hindering for academic achievements. So I think if we are to more serious about that, so I think it would be more effective. Like we want to work on more equity, the approach, and that by which underprivileged the communities and students that they can come forward and they can show their unique performance and talents, like the black communities, Aboriginal peoples, and new immigrants, the low-income families. So we need to address those things. Thank you.
Great. Seeing no other questions, thank you very much for coming and delivering the report and for your continued work with engaging parents across our district.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone. At the very last, you are still here. So thank you. Thank you again.
I will now look for somebody to move receipt of all of the annual reports. Trustee Huff, thank you. And I will call the question. All those in favor? That carries, and we will move on to reports from statutory and other committees. Someone to move receipt of the Parent Involvement Committee on the 8th of May 2019. Trustee Huff, thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And that carries. We'll move on to the Special Education Advisory Committee minutes from the 15th of May 2019. Someone to move receipt of that report. Thank you, Trustee Jennekins. Are there any errors or omissions? Trustee Boothby?
Thank you. I did send this in to staff earlier today. So in the discussion around the storefront, one item of importance that I think was omitted, and the wording was sent to staff. Is it up there? Okay. One important aspect of storefront is a location outside the more traditional high school locations like OTSS to promote more adult post-secondary environment, responsibilities, and independence. So that that thought that I raised at the meeting wasn't included in the minutes, and I'd like it to be.
Okay, any other errors or omissions? Seeing none, I'll call the question on receipt. All those in favor? That carries, and I will look for someone to move receipt of the Indigenous Education Advisory Council report from the 16th of May 2019. Thank you, Trustee Huff. Are there any errors or omissions in this report? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? That carries. And we are on to our information items. Report from OPSPA.
None this evening, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Any new ministry initiatives that we need to be updated on, Director?
This evening.
Great. And I think we probably had a pretty comprehensive OSTA update. Is there anything else we need to hear about from OSTA? No? We're good? Any new business? Seeing none, we are adjourned.